Why do some societies seem inherently disciplined, calm, and respectful of public spaces, while others feel like an everyday battleground of chaos, low civic sense, and high rates of violence? Today, we are going to look at why developing nations aren't suffering from a lack of goodness. They are trapped in a systemic, multi-generational state of survival mode. If your immediate answer is culture, education, or bad morals, you're missing the bigger picture. The truth is much colder, and it can be explained by a single psychological pyramid created in 1943, Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Abraham Maslow's core rule was simple. You cannot focus on a higher-level need if your lower-level needs are constantly under threat. The 5 distinct levels of the pyramid, ordered from the foundational bottom to the peak. Physiological needs. The biological requirements for human survival, including food, water, air, sleep, and clothing. Safety needs. The demand for predictability and control in life, which includes personal security, financial stability, health, and protection against accidents. Love and belonging. The human desire for interpersonal relationships and being part of a group, covering friendships, intimacy, trust, and family. Esteem needs. The need for personal fulfillment and respect, which is split into self-esteem, dignity, achievement, mastery, and the desire for reputation or respect from others, status, prestige. Self-actualization. The realization of a person's full potential, involving self-fulfillment, seeking personal growth, creativity, and peak experiences.
In developed nations, the base needs like food, water, and institutional safety are largely guaranteed. This security provides the mental bandwidth for citizens to address higher-level concepts like civic duty and public aesthetics. But what happens when an entire nation is stuck struggling at the very bottom?
Symptom 1. The civic sense illusion. Let's address the first symptom, the apparent lack of civic sense and discipline. When infrastructure is broken, public transportation is dangerously overcrowded, and resources are scarce, life becomes a zero-sum game. Sociologists call this mental exhaustion from living in structural chaos. When the system doesn't respect the citizen stops respecting the system. The queue versus the shove. In a system where there are 100 people but only 10 seats on a bus, waiting patiently in a line means you don't get to work on time. Aggression and cutting ahead become survival mechanisms, not just bad manners. The litter dilemma. When an individual faces chronic financial stress, mental fatigue, or inadequate waste systems, their cognitive load is entirely consumed by immediate personal survival. Caring for the public good or an anonymous street becomes an unaffordable luxury.
The mental bandwidth gap highlights this. When an individual faces chronic financial stress, mental fatigue, or inadequate waste systems, their cognitive load is entirely consumed by immediate personal survival. Caring for the public good or an anonymous street becomes an unaffordable luxury. When the base needs are met, mental bandwidth is available, and civic behavior emerges. Conversely, when base needs are threatened, cognitive load is consumed, and civic behavior collapses. Survival consumes all mental energy. When safety collapses, the violence question. In developed nations, the bottom 2 tiers, food, water, electricity, basic policing, and institutional safety, are largely guaranteed by the state. Because their survival is secure, citizens have the mental bandwidth to climb to the top of the pyramid. They can afford to care about abstract concepts like civic duty, public aesthetics, recycling, and queuing up. When the second tier of the pyramid, safety and security, is vacant, the social contract completely collapses. According to sociological strain theory, when a society glorifies success and survival but fails to provide stable legal paths to achieve basic safety, people resort to desperate measures.
Economic violence. Robbery, extortion, and gang violence thrive where basic employment is non-existent. When a human being cannot feed their family legally, the moral inhibition against illegal means shatters. Strain theory. When society glorifies success but provides no legal path to achieve basic safety, desperation becomes the default strategy for survival. Collapsed social contract. Without institutional safety, the implicit agreement between citizen and state breaks down entirely, and chaos fills the vacuum.
The dehumanization of women. Second, consider the dehumanization of women. In environments trapped in low-tier survival, progressive education regarding gender equality is often entirely absent. Combine this with weak law enforcement, systemic corruption, and deep-seated patriarchal structures where power is the only currency that matters. In a society where people feel powerless against economic conditions, that frustration frequently vents as horrific violence against those with even less systemic power, disproportionately affecting women. When survival is an everyday war, empathy is the first casualty.
True development means securing the base of the pyramid for the most vulnerable. This involves building robust public safety, fair infrastructure, and economic dignity. Only when survival is a given can a society afford to choose civilization. The question remains, are our behaviors a product of our morals or our environment?